Welcome everyone to the next session of our SCALE Masterclass. And so happy to have everyone with us today and excited, really excited about our guest, not so secret guest that we have coming on. But before we pass it over to him, let me just quickly walk you through what exactly is the SCALE framework that we have in place. So if you go to the next slide, here's our plan for the hour. Next slide, please. So we're looking to kick off with the a welcome, and which is what I'm doing now. Introduce you to the scale framework. I hope by now you're starting to know and maybe even have memorized what each of the five letters mean. And then we go back to going to what you're actually here for, which is the live Q&A with Tosin Bolaji. Before we wrap up and talk about what could be your next step. So moving on. So why do we want to do this masterclass? As you may have heard from our previous sessions, Zer Consultant Africa is a purpose-driven strategy and management consulting firm, and we're looking. This is our way to keep giving back and providing value to the ecosystem, to the SME ecosystem across Africa. We want to empower business leaders. We want to empower folks like you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, sharing knowledge, sharing tools, sharing frameworks, upskilling, all of us. So we're in it together. We're learning as we go as well. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is really build resilient businesses, building what we call and scaling what we call African excellence for the global stage. And just quickly about myself, I won't spend too long. I'm a CEO, I'm a founder. I've been back on the continent for almost a decade, invested €500 million across the continent in a previous role, CEO for a multinational, a subsidiary of a multinational, but most importantly, I'm an Afro-optimist. And so this is what we're trying to do to bring Afro-optimists together to build what we call Zer Nation, a movement that believes and sees the challenges that we have on the continent, but believes that we can surmount them and believes that we have to surmount them for the sake of the next generation. So what is the SCALE framework? So the SCALE framework, basically, if we move to the next slide. Oh, before we get to the SCALE framework, let's just talk about so most of you would have signed up via the link. And here, as we do every session, we tell you about, okay, how, what people want to talk about. These are the five areas which you should recognize. We've talked about strategy, and we will continue to talk about strategy. That seems to be the crowd favorite. But of course, there's four other areas that need to be developed as well. And so today we want to focus on champion excellence, hence the Q&A. And I believe that you will get a number of practical tips. I see the huge number of folks who want practical tips. In this live Q&A with Tosin, I believe you'll get a number of practical tips that you can use in terms of champion excellence. So what is the SCALE framework? So the SCALE framework looks at five areas, and it's basically a five-step roadmap, right? So we talk about strategy, we talk about people, we talk about leadership, corporate governance, and expansion. And but what the SCALE framework does is to actually give you a roadmap as to how to move along those five areas. And we do believe that these are the five key areas that you need to focus on when you want to build a sustainable business here in Africa and across the world. And so if we look very quickly before moving into the live part of the Q&A part of this session, we have, and if we keep going, so yes, so if we just move, so we have strategize your vision, which we've mentioned, and then champion excellence, accelerating leadership, exceptional leadership, all leadership is not the same, leveraging governance for sustainable growth, and then we have expanding your impact via growth capital. And growth capital is not just financial capital, but also social capital as well in terms of relationships, networks, and collaborations. But today, we're going to focus on champion excellence. And with that, let's start moving into and introducing Tosin Bolaji. So Tosin and I go a little ways back. We were former colleagues while we were at Allianz here in Nigeria. And before then, Tosin started his career at Fate Foundation and currently now is at IHS Towers. And throughout it all, his focus has been people, it has been talent and building that talent, relationships, building the right kind of culture and mindset in the companies that he's worked in and the companies to come. So, with that, we invite Tosin to the stage. Tosin Bolaji, please join us. Thank you for being with us today, Tosin.
Hi, Adeolu. Thank you so much for having me.
Good,
Thank
good,
you.
good. So you know that I've been very excited about this, Tosin. I hope you're not scared by all my enthusiasm by having you as our very first guest as part of the Scale Masterclass. But I always believe that it starts with people. So I'm happy that as our first guest, we're able to start with people. Now, there was a series that you just concluded, right? Last month on LinkedIn. I received a lot of, I think it resonated with a lot of people when I read the feedback, and I was one of your daily customers who was reading the post every day. Maybe you just talk a little bit about what was the reason for this series that you had gone through last month.
All right. Thank you, Adeolu, for having me at this session. Um, I'm very Pan African in everything that I do, and I'm really excited to be, at this masterclass today. Yeah. So I started my career in 2015. That was a year after I finished my extra year from the university. And ever since, I've always been passionate about helping other people grow, helping other people become better at what they do. So for me, May 2025 makes it 10 years of, working. And I
Congrats.
felt a good milestone. Thank you very much. So I felt that was a milestone worth celebrating. Um, and for me, celebrating it was not just looking at how far I have come, but also how we can help the people coming behind. Because when I look at my journey, it's a lot of input from different people, a lot of support, a lot of investments from other people who have gone before. And I felt the best way to celebrate it was to pay it forward, which is what I truly believe that, the spirit of impact is all about.
Yeah, and I love that phrase "paired forward." I love the movie almost just as much. And so, for everyone that's listening to us, where I have some questions already prepared for Tosin. I had a lot of questions as we were going through his series, but this session is for you. So please drop whatever questions, comments, reactions you have to whatever we're talking about. You can agree, you can disagree. Let's just hear your comments. So let's start with the first. So your series was talking and looking at careers, but not just early careers, but really going through even mid careers. But even speaking to someone like me who's been around a few years, so let's start with mindset, which I'm a big fan of because I always believe that it starts with mindset. Like you can train everything else, but trying to shift someone's mindset will be very difficult. So talk to us about what you see as the real challenge when we're building high performing teams, and how can we help to shift that mindset, particularly at the beginning when it should be a bit easier, but even um, later on when we hope that people can still find some way to change.
Sorry, Adeola, I lost you for a bit. I think that was internet glitch, but could you please take the question again?
Sure. So we're here about mindset, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about how as leaders, we can help our teams build the right mindset, develop the right mindset, even at the early stages, but even as they go through their career.
Okay, thank you. So for me, I think that mindset really begins with how the leader positions the purpose of what is being done, right? A lot of times, what we see is um, we hear data a lot. A lot of these days, people say, "Oh, data this, data that, data tells everything." While I agree with that, I also believe that people connect first with people before they connect with data.
Hmm.
right? So as leaders, I think we need to be a bit more deliberate about connecting with our people. And connecting with our people means helping them understand the why of, what we are doing, what we are all about. All
Hmm.
right. Connecting that to their own purpose, because I'm likely to be more inspired and motivated to get my job done if I understand that I'm part of something bigger than if
Yeah.
I only see my job as a means to getting paid at the end of the month.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that that balance needs to really come in there. I remember when I started my career, one of the things that I was told, by my then executive director at Faith Foundation, was the fact that, yeah, what we do is basically to train entrepreneurs. That's what a layman out there would say. But if
Hmm.
you look at it clearly, when we raise an entrepreneur and we support them and we help them get it right, they create jobs for other families, right? They create jobs for other people, and through that, we are able to uh, bridge the gap of unemployment in Nigeria. So for everything that I was doing, I wasn't just seeing myself managing a program meant to develop entrepreneurs. I was seeing the bigger picture of how this connects to helping businesses get it right. Then data came in to say, okay, at that time, I think the mortality rate of startups in Nigeria was about 80% within the first 5 years. Now I could relate with data because now I understood the problem we were setting out to solve, why it was important to solve it, and then I
Hmm.
could cite the problem with data. So I think one balance that leaders need to have these days is not to assume that someone who is coming into your organization, whether you're a business owner, whether you are maybe a senior leader within the corporate space, and you have brought someone into your team, it's easy and very safe, to assume that, okay, this person is experienced, or this person knows what we do, or this person knows the skills required for the job, but the context of our organization is different. So two, three organizations can play in the same industry, but their purposes are different. What they're
Okay.
trying to really achieve are different. Yes, the same market, the same impact, but their approach to it is very different. So I believe that leaders need to be able to make that connect of people connecting with people before they connect, with everything else. That way, people are able to see the bigger picture, see how their own role fits into the bigger picture, and then they're able to play more effective parts in it.
But what stops us from connecting? So as leaders, I mean, this sounds all very easy. People should connect with other people. As human beings, that's what we want to do. We want to connect with others. But as a leader myself, sometimes I'm just busy. Right? It's not that I don't want to connect, but as I'm running from meeting to meeting, I have client deadlines, etc. And then someone from my team comes with a request or wants to talk. It can be very easy to sort of just push them inside and say, okay, you're not a priority. You don't say it, but that's what you're showing them, that you're not a priority. So how can we overcome this? What some tips you have?
Okay. Well, again, I think that really it's about being human, right? And really helping people to understand that we are human. I've never been a CEO like yourself, Adeolu. But then, yeah, but in my little experience of managing people, I think that one of the things that is very important is how we treat critical moments. There are critical moments, and there are moments where we can, maybe request for a reschedule. Moments where mistakes are made, moments where successes are made, moments where we have to have really tough and difficult conversations, moments
Mhm.
where our team really needs us, to listen and not just to give a feedback and just move on. So we need to sometimes be very sensitive to that, so that we are not dismissing a moment that is very vulnerable for them. Because at the end of the day, what we do or what we don't do is counting towards trust. And for
Mhm.
me, trust determines, to a large extent, how much people are willing to go the extra mile. If they don't feel valued, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel like they can reach out to their leader, if they don't feel like, even if I have goofed or made a big mistake, I can come back to my leader or my boss or my manager and not get condemned for it, but get supported for it. If they don't feel that psychological safety, it's difficult for them to chase excellence. Most likely, they'll be walking on eggshells. They'll be trying to see how they can protect themselves rather than how they can go the extra mile and do it afraid.
All these truth bombs that you're laying out: psychological safety, do it afraid, pay it forward, etc. Yeah, I think that it can be easier said than done. I mean, you know this, right? Particularly if when we're in a society that seems to maybe value grades over what you can actually deliver, which is something that I've noticed is coming back to Nigeria. People are here with their certificates and their doctorates and their what have you, multiple masters, etc. Is this actually helping us? Please.
Eh, Okay, that's a very very big thing you have touched on there because I think it's a big deal because if anyone goes on LinkedIn right now, anyone on this call, go check entry level roles, check Nigeria as a case study within West Africa. You'll see most organizations will put all the things that they need there, the profile of the job, the skills required, the soft skills, the technical skills, and then eligibility comes in, and then they say minimum 2-1, or they say first class, or they say
Mm-hmm.
maximum age of so and so.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that we live in an environment um, that has assumed that the school system is a holistic yardstick for measuring capability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a school system says when you're able to pass your exams, you're rated well. you know
Mm-hmm.
Ignoring the fact that there might be other factors affecting a person. So imagine that in Nigeria we have maybe person A who comes from a privileged background, able to focus on their academics, able to put all their time. It's just school. I mean, class, maybe class residence, and it's like a perfect environment for them. But we also have other people who, maybe by reason of circumstance, they had to become breadwinners at a very early age, right? And the same people have gone into school with this
Mm.
same person who comes from a privileged background. After class, they still have to go do business somewhere. They still have to go do some trading somewhere, come back to the hostel, bond a bit that all, support the younger ones. Some of them support even their parents. This other person, B, comes up with a 2-2, maybe even a third class, right?
Mm.
And at the end of the day, organizations or recruiters, let me not say organizations, recruiters are looking for people who just have a 2-1 or a first class. All right. What we have done inadvertently is that we have taken out people who have built a lot of other soft skills that are needed in the workplace, right? Being able to
Yeah.
balance different things, being able to engage customers, being able to empathize, being able to juggle things and take responsibility, without having to be told to do certain things. That's what person B has developed. But a
Mm-hmm.
2-2 degree cannot show that. A first class
Yeah.
degree does not show that. So it only has shown my ability to answer questions. And I think that's why when you now look at job profiles of experienced people, or experienced roles on LinkedIn, you'd see, let's say, 10 years experience with minimum so and so in this area. When it comes to what they leave school with or what they graduated from, they will say a related discipline in sciences, others. Nobody talks again about first class or second class,
No.
because we have now come to realize that it's about the hands-on experience. It's about the evidence of being there and done it. And I think that a lot of businesses through that leave value on the table. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the early career programs I managed some years back. I had to make a proposal. See, let's take off the first class. Let's take off the second class. Let's everybody do it. And we saw some interesting results. We had people who had HND, who scored higher in aptitude tests than people who had first class. you know
Interesting.
we have people who are 2-2 who made it to the top to the 95th percentile. So that again goes to underscore the fact that um, school system is great, is good. It helps to put some structure, build finesse in people and all that, but it's not the holistic yardstick of measuring people's capability. So things like empathy, things like being able to find out what problems are, because school teaches us to solve problems, but only problems that have been identified most of the time. What the school system has not effectively gotten is how to build the capability in people to find out what they don't know, and then bridge that gap for themselves. Most times we learn it in the informal setting outside of the walls of the school. So when business leaders are starting their organizations, maybe startups, or even maybe any business leader out there joining us on this call, it's really to say that let's begin to look at where we haven't been looking at already, because there's a lot of value we're leaving on the table. The bias of age. Someone leaves school at 31 because they had to spend first 3 4 years out of high school trying to support their
Mm.
family, and then they get into school and then they finish school, at a later age than their contemporaries, and because of that, they are disqualified. So I really think that we need to start looking differently and testing for all these other abilities that school system might not have gotten for us.
Yeah, so then what we talk about and what we preach is a meritocracy. And with all you said, it's interesting to think about. And there's been some videos I've watched recently on Instagram that talks about what is actually, can we really build a real meritocracy when it
Mm,
comes to people who have grown up with privilege, like you just pointed out.
yeah,
And so people who have grown up with privilege, and privilege is not just tied to your skin color, but can be tied to your income and other things, right?
yeah,
So and you're all running the same race, but some people are just hampered already at the start, and then we're trying
exactly.
to compare them and talking about, oh, but everyone's the same. It's a meritocratic society, and everyone should be rated the same. But what are you seeing, and what do you advise us as business owners? How can we, if we don't use grades, if we don't use where you went to school, how can we compare person A and person B? Are we still together, Tosin?
Yeah, sorry, the internet froze a bit. Please take the
Yeah.
question.
Yes. So I was talking about in a supposedly meritocratic society, right? When we have
Mhm.
someone who's privileged and someone who's less privileged,
Mhm.
and we're saying take grades off the table because of this. So how do I, as a business owner, how am I able to compare those two? If I can't look at their grades, if I can't look at where they went to school, what they studied, what's left to me?
Okay, thank you for that question. And I believe that there are ways that we can test for ability, right? Regardless of people's background. And ability is not something that is faked. It is something that can be proven. Um, I'll digress a bit.
Mhm.
So a young lady reached out to me recently, one of my proteges, and she was trying to apply for entry level jobs, and the kind of jobs she was interested in. She said they were requesting for 2 years of experience. She didn't have 2 years of experience, right? She just finished youth service, and so she was a bit demotivated by the request that she was seeing.
Mhm.
So I said to her, "Okay, what kind of role are you looking at?" She said, "Project management." Okay, have you ever organized birthday parties for anyone before? Have you ever volunteered for any program before? Have you ever done any of those things? She said, "Yeah, but I mean, that's not work experience. It's just things I did." I said, "Okay, I agree it's not work experience. But do you think that when you actually get into a work environment, you'd be able to pull out those initiative that you demonstrated? Would you be able to do that again?" She said, "Oh, sure, sure." I said, "Then that's work experience." Because what you really need is evidence that this person has been able to do this in whatever situation. That's why we call them transferable skills. Whether
Mm.
it's for a birthday party or whether it's for the launch of a product, if someone has been able to demonstrate initiative, demonstrate the ability to work with other people, demonstrate the ability to see the sequence of events and follow through on them, I believe they have the skills. So first thing I think leaders need to start doing is to start looking at the evidence of the skills, not just what the CV says. And besides,
Mhm.
ChatGPT is there today. Anybody can prepare a CV. Anybody can do all that. But it takes us looking beyond the paper. Yes, a CV gets a person into the door, but the point of engagement, the point of interview, should be that environment where leaders can now begin to test for ability. I was sitting on an interview, outside of work recently, and a leader was trying to pose a question to the candidates, and then the leader was asking questions like, "What would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened?" And I cringed a little bit because for me that was not really testing for ability. It was telling me, I'm painting this scenario, solve this scenario for me. That's
Very
giving me
theoretical, right?
school. Exactly. You
Hmm.
know, so after the first interview, I had a conversation with the person. I said, "Can we tweak these questions a little bit?" So rather than tell the person, or rather than pose the questions as hypothetical questions, because you're
Hmm.
testing for intelligence, you know, reframe the questions to be experience based questions. This way, you're testing for behavior, you're testing for receipts of those skills. So we rephrase the questions to things like, "Oh, tell me about the time when you
Hmm.
did this and this, or
Yeah,
something like this happened.
yeah,
What did you do? All right. Tell me about the time when you failed. How did you manage it? How did you navigate it?" With that, yeah, we have some people who have really, really mastered the craft of pitching for interviews and all of that.
yeah, of
But
course.
with that approach, yes, so with that approach, we can probe a little bit better. We can get into the mindset of this person, see how they have surmounted challenges in their own personal spaces or things that they have done before, and that begins to tell us how these people are likely to respond under situations that warrant them to, take initiative, take ownership, and do things. I do acknowledge the fact that some roles are not just about the experiences that people
Yeah,
have had. It's either you have the skill or you don't have it. For
yeah,
instance, accounting. There's no amount of challenge you're faced in life that will help you understand how to go through some certain processes. You just have to know it or you don't know it,
yeah, yeah.
right? So,
But
so
those are the
yes, things
exception,
that
right?
are
That's
technical,
not
we
the rule.
test technical. But
Hmm.
beyond technical, it's also important for us to test for the behavioral, to test
Hmm.
for how they have behaved, in different conditions, which is a strong indicator of how they are likely, to show up when you need them to show up, within your organization.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. An excellent point from Kadekeo. We've hired salespeople with excellent paper qualifications, but poor performance on trial, and another who excelled in performance after selling themselves during an interview without solid paper credentials. So yeah, it seems like you're getting some agreement from the audience. I'd like to step
Yeah.
back to something, a term you mentioned, Tosin, psychological safety. I mean, that's a term that's starting to get thrown out there more and more often. Maybe you can just help some who have never heard it uh, understand what psychological safety means, and then drill down into how we can create a culture as leaders where our employees or our team members, let's call them team members, not employees, feel safe to use their voice, to offer solutions, to speak up, which is what we always ask them to do. Just speak up. Don't be in a meeting and just sit in the entire meeting and not go through it and not say a word. So
Yeah.
how can we help our team members to do that?
Okay. Thanks, Adeolu. Psychological safety is just two things. One is psychology, and the other one is safety. Right? When people feel safe, they are not too cautious to make a move. Right?
Hmm.
When people feel safe, they don't feel like it's the end of the world if they make a mistake. Right? Psychological safety, in simple terms, is just having a safe space, to be and express yourself.
Hmm.
Right? Really, that's what it means. And there are different ways that they can be cultivated. But before we speak to that, I'd like to speak to a few things that um, sabotage psychological safety in the workplace. Number one is hierarchy. You know, um, I understand, and we all know that for any organization to function, there has to be order, right? There has to be
Hmm.
report lines and all of that. You know, um, but in ensuring that younger people feel feel safe enough to share. It's important that we begin to build environments where they don't feel like they are far off. They don't feel like their input does not count. You know, but they begin to feel like it actually counts. Because the truth is, personally, I believe that the generation coming behind every generation is more curious than the one before it.
Mm.
I feel like they readily see solutions to problems that the preceding generation of workforce does not see. A very layman example is how kids don't need to learn your password before they open your phone, right?
No.
And then our aged parents were still teaching them how to use the password. So they were born into it. So what the previous generation sees as impossible, they grew up seeing it as normal. And I
Mm.
think we need to appreciate that uniqueness and diversity even in the workplace, to help young
Okay.
people understand that they bring a lot of value to the workplace. In my experience managing early career programs, sometimes I see a lot of young people deferring to older people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that there's a very strong cultural tilt to that. For instance, growing up, I was told that you don't speak when adults are speaking. All
Mm.
right. So it was culture for me. It wasn't a thing of not being bold or any. I just grew up to know that when adults are speaking, you keep quiet. If you have anything to say, even if an adult is wrong, you know, you swallow it. You don't tell them they're wrong. You don't call it out to
Mm.
them. But thank God
Mhm.
we're in Gen Z's world now. It's the other way around.
We
you
can
know,
we can go too far the other way too, but we need to balance.
exactly. Yeah. So building
And there's the
psychology.
how. How do you do it? How do you call
Exactly,
someone out?
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think first of all, as senior workforce, I want to use that word. I don't want to just say leaders because everyone, in some way, we are leading something.
Yeah.
But for the pre-existing workforce, we need to be open to the reality that the people coming behind think differently from what we do. They see things differently, they behave differently, they act different. And it's not just saying this because it's a cliche out there, but we need to really re-engineer our minds. I've seen Gen Z stop me when I'm talking and say, you know what, I have this idea, I don't think your idea would work. And I open my mind to what they have to say, because again, they're bringing ideas. That's what I want them to do. But if I
Mm.
tell them they must bring it only through a stereotyped approach that I feel comfortable with, at the end of the day, they might feel unsafe, to share
Mm.
their thoughts around me. That's the first one. So we need to open our minds to the fact that people are different, and
Mhm.
the more the demographics change, the more the differences,
Well, this is
appear.
your workforce.
The
Yay.
second thing is, as leaders, or as people who are looking up to us, we need to help them see that we've been through what they've been through.
Mm.
It helps younger people to understand that, okay, I've been there before, I've made my mistakes before. Don't feel like you can't measure up. A lot of people, I was reading the story yesterday of Susan, that you shared, how
Mhm.
that she felt a lot of imposter syndrome, and that in
Mhm.
itself can make someone feel like they don't have much to contribute, or can make them second guess themselves a lot. you know um, to help such young people, it's important that we're able to show them that, see, we also grew. We never became what we became, like what we are, where we are now. I was not
Yeah.
like this 10 years ago when I started,
Yeah. Mhm.
when I joined the workforce. But by learning, by seeing what people are doing, I was able to grow and improve. Then the third thing I would like to talk about is culture. And
Mm.
I think this in itself is what ensures whether people will be safe
Mhm.
psychologically in an environment or not. It's culture.
Mhm.
Someone defined culture recently, in a master class that I attended, another one, and I really loved the definition. Very simple. It says culture basically is what you reward and what you punish in an
Mm.
organization.
Mm.
Before you look at every other thing, it's what do you reward? What do you encourage? When
Mhm.
people see consistency in what you reward as a leader, that you encourage people to speak up, you encourage people to make presentations, you encourage people to ask questions, you wait until people actually ask questions, then they begin to open up. They begin to, because at first everybody is trying to watch, they're trying to be safe. Everybody is trying to play safe, trying to look all, put together, excuse me. But when they realize that, okay, everyone here is trying to move, you know, move towards progress, then no question is silly, no question is more intelligent than the other, no person's idea is bigger than another. It's easier for them to begin to express. I remember earlier in my career, I would ask all the stupid questions of this world. right? And that's because I was really keen on getting to know. So even if a question sounded obvious to certain leaders, I'm grateful for the kind of people I had around me then, because they didn't dismiss my questions, right?
Hmm.
But they tried to respond to the questions. They tried to rephrase my questions. They tried to do a little bit of mini coaching through my questions and help me
Mm.
clarify exactly what I'm trying to ask about. And over time, I observed, being in that environment, I built the capacity to be able to ask questions as well. So
Yeah.
now I don't feel anything if I ask a question and it's my question, right? Now I feel safe. Now I can continue in that space. Finally, is how people handle critical moments. I've said that earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again, that how leaders handle failure is very important. How leaders handle mistakes
Mhm.
is very important. How leaders show up for their team is very
Mhm.
important. I love this movie called New Amsterdam. I watched it a while back on Netflix. I was going to say on LinkedIn, no, but on Netflix. You know, and the doctor would always ask. He was the CMD of the hospital. Any team member he saw, he would always ask, "How can I help?" Right? Even though he was checking to know the feedback, the update on the work he had given them, it's okay. Tell me, how can I help? That
Mm.
empowered his team not to come and take instruction, but rather to take instruction from the team to say, okay, this is what I'm working on. This is where I need your help as my leader.
Yeah.
I try to do that now with my team to say, how can I help? And when they push the question to me to say, um, um, oh, this is what I need. What do you think I should do? Then I take it back to them and say, well, it's your thing. You tell me what you want to do, and then let me know how I can help. And that way they are able to make more decision, more judgment calls without having me do that for them all the time. Sometimes they just bounce off ideas, by me, and I'm okay with it. So in building psychological safety, I wouldn't say there is a hard rule of one step, two step, three towards it. But it's in creating an environment where people don't feel like they have to show up perfect to you as the leader. If they
Yeah.
have to do that, they're not safe. If
Okay.
they have to do that, they will make a lot of mistakes. So it's creating that environment that is conducive for them to be themselves, to make their mistakes, even if it means telling someone, say, make your mistakes, right? Don't think that any question you bring to me has to be a gangster question, like Gen Z will say, but let it be any question at all. I won't turn you back. They feel safe. They feel they can
Okay.
come because their leader has demonstrated that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So there is a question that has come up that I would like us to take from Malik Shafi Lizinde. So thank you for that, Malik. So Malik's question is, how do you communicate to young people that while they may have talent and potential, certain skills and insights can only be gained through experience? So
Hmm.
yay for the senior folks in the room.
This is simple yet not simple.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
Because we're all
Um
impatient, right? That's human nature. We
yeah,
even I
yeah,
remember when I was sitting in your shoes 10 years into my career, and I thought I could conquer the world. And now 25 years in, I start to realize how much more I still have to learn 15 years
yeah,
later. But please go ahead.
yeah. I mean, this question reminds me of, I think, my first year of work,
Mhm.
and I was being asked to work on something. So they asked me if I had done something before, and then loosely I was throwing the word around. I said, yes, I've done strategy, I've done this, I've done that, And the leader I was talking to was just looking at me and smiling. I said, no, you've not done strategy. I said, I've done it. No, you have not done strategy. And then when we started the work, it was clear that there were certain things that I didn't know. For young people, I think the first thing, and not even just young people, everybody, the first thing we need to give to the next person across the table is acceptance.
Mm,
Everybody needs to feel validated.
mm,
It's an innate need of every human being. When we don't feel validated, we put up our defenses. We try to prove to be what we already are, because we're not getting that resonance from the person across us. So I think the first thing to young people is to accept, first of all, that they are talented, they are curious, they are impatient too. They just feel like this thing can be done better. They don't see sometimes the reason why process has to be followed, or they don't see the reason why they have to do certain things in ethical ways. They're like, oh, I can just get this done and in 5 minutes I'm done. And they don't see the implication or the impact, of that. So how can we help young people? We accept, first of all, um, their skills, their energy. Second is we help them understand that, see, I think sharing some of our mistakes with them can also help, right? Um, Helping them realize that, see, I'll be young like you, I've been like you. But the truth is, in an environment where you work, you're not just working alone. You're not working as a solo contributor. Even if you're a solo contributor, you still get to work with people who have different mindsets, who have different perspectives to what they're doing. And as you begin to grow, you need to be sensitive to that. It's not just about getting results your way; it's about getting results in a collaborative way. And I
Mm,
think that's one of the bane of institutions that people graduate from in school. Because most times we were taught to pass exams, and to pass exams, it means I have to protect my idea, I have to protect myself from every other person. So I don't see a need to collaborate. Okay, so I've
mm,
been trained through that process for 4 or 5 years of schooling, and then I come into the work environment, a brilliant chap, and then you're telling me to go and share my idea with another person. You're telling me to work at another person's pace. Somebody is posing questions, poking, concerns and risks and ideas, and you're telling me to keep it calm. I can't keep it calm. This is my idea. So they need to begin to see that. See, you have to open up. It's a different environment, and gradually, certainly, people will eventually catch up. I mean, we all have been there at some point, and we now
yeah,
have this realization. Over time, they will catch it as well.
yeah. And there's always someone older than us who's rolling their eyes at us. I would like to
Absolutely.
thank you for that response, Tosin. And please, folks, just keep the questions, the comments coming in. Thank you, Precious, for this comment. Who Precious asking a lot of questions and now moving to Chat GPT to answer all his questions. I think that's a great way to do it. I would like to again step back to something that actually someone resonated with someone about. I love the senior workforce. That was a comment that came up. The young energy is priceless. Experience plus energy equals excellence. Great,
Okay.
great. Thank you for that. So the senior workforce, they're the ones that we usually approach as we are looking for coaching, for mentoring, for sponsorship, etc. I mean, there's a reason they keep us gray hairs around. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is the difference between all these different terminologies that get thrown out there, and how can should we approach it from both sides, so both from someone who's been asked to provide this and someone who's doing the asking. I know that's a
Okay.
lot.
Thank you. This. I'm very passionate about this part because, for me, I think this is the part of schooling that is often missed.
Mm,
Right. um, in school we have tutors, we have people who train us, we have people who evaluate us. We do things because there's a sequence to it, or we have a semester, when it starts, when it ends. They're just there to prove your um, ability to follow instructions, right? On the other side of the divide is where you have what I call support systems. So, advisors, mentors, sponsors, coaches. For me, I consider them as critical relationships that everybody needs to have, regardless of their field of discipline, whether they are corporate people or whether they're entrepreneurs or whether they're even sports people. And I think sports people see the essence of these support systems more readily in their career, than in
mhm,
other spaces. You know, um, so yeah, support systems are critical. It's not a nice to have. It's not something that is exclusive to a few people. It's something
mhm.
everyone needs. And for me, so I'll just go quickly through trying to explain each of them and maybe share a little bit of my journey from both sides of asking and providing.
Yeah,
So
please.
first of all is the advisor. Basically, an
Mhm.
advisor, the underpinning principle for an advisor is that there are people who have different perspectives and maybe a little bit more insight than we do. All right.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
for me, an advisor is someone um, who has a different perspective or a better perspective, because not everybody can be an advisor, right? Some people don't have the capacity to advise because maybe we're on it could be because we're on the same level, or because we are even better informed than them. But there are people who have had some experience, a little bit more experience than we have, and asking for advice is something that is low commitment but high value, right?
So they
In the
should
sense,
be maybe the next level up from where
yeah,
we are.
yes,
So,
it
so
could be the next level
okay.
up, and it could be steps even way higher, but
Oh, okay. There'd
minimum
be a
I
big gap.
recommend should be the next level up.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, the next level up. It takes away the burden of commitment, and but it helps to give the value, because personally, when people come to me for advice, I feel like I feel privileged to be able to share, because I see that, oh, I've come through a little bit, and another person can learn from it. It makes me feel fulfilled and
Hmm.
self-actualized in some way, and I think that's the benefit to the advisor. To
Hmm.
the advisee, they gain new perspective. They see how to do things differently from a different angle, and it just increases the opportunity to make better judgment calls. The second one is mentorship. But let me
Hmm.
say, should I talk about coaching? Okay, let me say mentorship. Okay, I will
Yeah.
come to
Right
coaching
there.
last.
Hmm.
For me, mentorship is more commitment, so it's higher investment and higher
Hmm.
value at the same time.
Hmm.
Higher investment because now it's not just advice or advisee engagement, which is very transactional. For the mentor-mentee relationship, like I said, it's a relationship, right?
Yeah.
There's more commitment, there is more value exchange, there is
Hmm.
more intentionality about it, there is more
Hmm.
involvement from both sides of the table. A mentor may or may not be in our field of experience, depending on what we want to get mentored on. It could be an area that is important to you off the job or on the job, and based on that, my advice is always to look within your circle. All right.
Okay.
Either you find someone directly in your circle, or you know someone who knows someone.
Mm.
That makes
Why is
it a
that?
little
Why?
bit.
Why can't I go to a complete stranger?
Well, going to a complete stranger, I've gotten a lot of that on LinkedIn, right? People say,
Mm.
oh, I want you to mentor me. I saw your profile. This is what I'm trying to do, HR. And I don't know the person. I don't
Mm.
feel, for me, it's a big ask when
There's no
someone just says, "Oh, I
connection.
want you to mentor me." It's vague. It's
Mm.
big. The very sight of that request makes me feel like there's a heavy burden already coming with it. So I'm a bit cautious trying to accept that. You know.
Although more formal mentoring programs, that's typically the case, right? A mentor is matched with a mentee, and they don't necessarily know each other.
Exactly. So in that situation, there's been a common ground, right? And the common ground is the program that has brought both mentor and mentee together. So on the side of
Mm.
the mentor is willing to give back to anybody who comes. The resistance is lower, right?
Mm.
On the side
Mm.
of the mentee as well, the mentee knows that I'm going to be getting value from mentors of this kind. So there's an
Mhm.
expectation at both ends, and then there's a mediator, right? Helping to ensure that there's chemistry. I remember when I managed mentoring programs about 8 years ago. Part of what I was doing was matching young entrepreneurs with accomplished entrepreneurs, right? And in some cases, I saw relationships that have thrived until now. They are still, thriving in those mentoring relationships. It outgrew the program to become a lifelong,
Mhm.
relationship for them. In some other cases, I've seen situations that where the mentorship never really lasted more than 2 months, right? And what we say in mentoring programs is that the first 1 month, 2 months is chemistry period, right? Where you're trying to check if there's chemistry
Mhm.
between the mentor and the mentee within that safe space. They're still able to go separate ways if they feel it's not really working, without the feeling that, oh, we're not both satisfied with each other, and all of that. But most of the mentoring programs can only handle a handful of mentoring relationships. A lot of
Mhm.
times, the kind of mentoring that we may be seeking might not necessarily exist in certain programs that we are aware of, but we can always see people who represent our aspirations around us,
Mhm.
either directly, people who have direct interaction with, or people that we know through other people. You see, and I think that is very effective. A mistake I see young people make these days is they want to be mentored by celebrities, which is
Mm.
not wrong.
Mm.
But the only challenge with that is that, will the celebrity have your time? Will the celebrity have the same commitment that you need? Most likely not. So they, and some people will say, "Oh, I get mentored through people's books." Well, I get knowledge from their books. Mentoring involves exchange. Yeah, we can read people's books and gain perspectives. To me, I see that as a documented form of being advised by
But
somebody who has.
I do receive those comments, right? People will tell me that, oh, they follow me on LinkedIn, and so they call me their mentor, even though maybe I've never ever met them in my life.
Yeah,
And I'm sure I have situations like that. It's not a book, right? It's not just one packaged information.
yeah,
You're interacting with
exactly.
the person, even if the person doesn't know that you're interacting with them. So can we call that mentoring?
Hmm, can we? Well, I think
If it's helping me.
maybe we can see it as role modeling and an
Mm.
aspect of mentoring, right? Because I'm seeing what this person is doing and I'm making adjustments based on that. But am I able to really get hands-on guidance from this person when I need it? Maybe or maybe not. So yeah, it's I
Sort
can't
of a
say
gray
it,
area, maybe. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of a great
Okay.
area. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Well, we
yeah.
do only have a few minutes left, so let's hear about sponsors and coaches. I think that's also very critical to understand.
Yes. So sponsors, interesting kind of relationship.
Mm.
Sponsors are not necessarily mentors or advisors.
Hmm.
Usually, they are accomplished people who are looking to either build legacy or looking for people who can take on more challenges
Hmm.
than they currently are. So sponsors are like, I don't want to call them recruiters or head hunters, but they are
Hmm.
people who, when they see excellence, they give it a platform. Basically,
Hmm.
they don't need to have prior relationships as advisors or mentors. They can, I can see a lot of people are saying that Julie is their mentor. She is my mentor too, by the way. you know yeah, so a sponsor basically recognizes somebody who has gone the extra mile to sort of distinguish themselves, and then gives them a platform to do more. I
Hmm.
was reading couple of months back a mentorship program by a company in the US, and how that mentorship has been institutionalized by the organization,
Hmm.
where they look out for people who they want to, so to speak, pour into, people who they have seen that the traits of leadership, of excellence in them, and then they just get to meet them. So they organize networking events, and they're have some form of
Hmm.
chemistry, and then the next thing they start having conversations and start
Hmm.
exposing them to different things. So a mentor basically gives access, gives exposure to an upcoming person, especially in places where the upcoming person is not present, right, or cannot readily access in the meantime. And that brings me to an important point. Sponsorship is not something that you go ask for, right? To say,
Hmm.
"Oh, I want you to be my sponsor." I want you to. By that mere action, anyone has disqualified himself or herself from
Yep.
sponsorship. You know, and then I'll just move on to, because of time, move on to the final one, which is coaching.
Yep.
I remember when.
Before you go into coaching, so final questions, guys. If you want another question to be answered by Tosin, please drop it now. This is your last chance. We'll maybe have him on again, because I see the questions and there's a lot to unpack and talk about when we talk about people. But yes, let's talk about coaching.
All right, thank you. So I remember one of those instances where I was in a fix, and I reached out to my mentor, and after I had lamented and told him everything, he just took a deep breath and said, "What you need is coaching." At that
Mm.
point, I mean, I've seen football coaches. Football coaches tell people what to do, right? They tell the player, no, go this way, go that way. Yeah. So yeah, okay, maybe that sounds like it, And it was amazing because he referred me to another person, although he's also, a coach, and referred me to another person who was asking me, okay, so what are your coaching objectives? I'm like, I have big problems. I don't have coaching objectives. Tell me what to do. Let me go solve it.
Mm.
That was my first experience of real coaching where I was asked questions that sort of placed a mirror in my front, helped me to think out loud, helped me to think from different angles. So it was as though I brought out myself and I was advising myself. But there was someone at the other end of the table who had been trained to ask questions to me, to help me look at perspectives I had not looked at before, and to help me create a listening environment where I could actually bring the solutions out from myself.
Mm.
Initially, it wasn't convenient. That was not what I was looking for, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, it was uncomfortable, but ever since that happened, I sort of do a micro coaching for myself, because I tend to see things from different perspectives, and I'm able to problem solve for myself. I still engage coaching from time to time, and I think a lot of people should actually try to find opportunities to get coached by people. You know, it does a world of difference in helping us to see things from different perspective. An advisor will tell you what to do or offer their own
Mm.
perspective. A coach will never
Mm.
do that. A
Yeah.
coach
Yeah.
will just ask questions and keep helping you to move from your point to your own solution point, and all the ideas mostly will come from you. Yeah.
Okay. So advisors are sort of telling you what to do. There may be a step ahead, so they've been where you are. Mentors, higher value, but more time commitment. Sponsors spotlight you in rooms where you might never enter, and a coach will ask you enough questions so you figure it out on your own. I want to close with this final question. If there are no questions coming from the audience, when we talk about moving ahead on your own, we have a number of leaders here listening to the messages that you've given us today and wondering, okay, now how do I incorporate these lessons not just for myself but for my team? So how can we as leaders instill a mindset of
Adeolu, if you can hear me, my internet just froze. Could you please take the
okay,
question again?
all right, are we together now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. So, for the leaders who have been listening to the messages and the tips you've given today and our discussion, and we talk about moving forward. So, how would you advise us as leaders to be able to instill this mindset that we've talked about of and relentless improvement, continuous personal development, etc., continuous learning, not just in ourselves but also in our team? I will close
Frozen.
with that question.
Sorry, I'm frozen again. Please, can you ask the tail end of the question again? How do we do it?
How do we instill this mindset of continuous learning, not just in ourselves, but also in our teams?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that there's a lot of reverse learning going on for people who are higher up, to learn from the younger generation. And I think that in itself encourages other people to also want to learn. Uh, the learning never really stops. For younger people, it's easier to look up to older people and say, "Oh, I have a lot to learn from them," and they don't see the reason why someone who is a CEO needs to learn more, from the
Mm.
rest of the team and all of that. But I think one of the ways that we can help people to imbibe learning as a mindset, right, is to continue to expose them to new challenges. And I'll explain. It's one thing for people to do their 9 to 5 and or join your team or work on a project and all of that. It's another thing when we encourage collaboration across teams. It helps us to learn, it helps us to see different perspectives that we probably haven't seen before. Learning is happening in fact in some cases that we don't know you know
Mm.
that it is happening. Again, I go back to one of the questions I asked earlier. Uh, Oftentimes, because leaders have seen it all most of the time, they sort of been there, done it, and everybody's looking up to them. And I think one of the ways that leaders can begin to shift the learning narratives for them is to ask their team members, how can I help? Right? Because what we think was the challenge we overcame on our way going up is totally different from what the younger person is also having to overcome on their way coming up. And if they're seeking support, the kind of support they might need will be different from the kind of support we needed when we were at their level. And as
Hmm.
a leader who is now trying to help them, it will require that we also re-engineer our minds to understand that their context is different from our context. And that
Hmm.
helps us to readjust and ensure that our support is tailor-made to them you
Hmm.
know yeah, so I think that can help us a lot in helping us to see where to support our teams. For me, I think that's $1 million question to ask the team anytime, to say, how can I help?
And I think
It,
that's a great way, for, a great place for us to pause. And I say pause deliberately, Tosin. This has definitely been a very interesting discussion. Learning as a mindset, and if we can all remember one thing from today's discussion, how can I help? So when your boss comes to you, and also when your team member comes to you, when your direct report comes to you, the first question will be, how can I help? So thank you, Tosin, for joining us. And
thank
thank
you.
you to everyone else. If we can just quickly put up the closing slide. I know that we've run a little bit over time. And for any of the questions that we haven't been able to respond to as we get through the discussion, they will be we will respond to them. We'll have Tosin respond to them on the LinkedIn as where they're recorded. So please expect that to happen. Can we get the presentation up, please? Yes, thank you. Just the final slide as we close this out. So as that's coming up, so where do we take this forward? How can we help? And what you can do is to assess yourselves along the same 5 areas that we've talked about. Um, and so we're looking at strategize, we're looking at what we talked about here about championing excellence, accelerate leadership, leverage governance, and expand your impact. So we'll be dropping our Scale Your Business scorecard in the follow-up emails. The recording will be available on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. And we've been very happy to have you here with us today and expect more. So please, how can I help? Have a great day. Bye, everyone.